Well, dear friends, also those who are watching this on the stream broadcasts, you are all very welcome to this event where we will be presenting the report on the Finnish-Estonian History Dialogue and discuss the next steps also regarding our historical cooperation. But first I will give the word to Jaana Varsama, Director of Tuklasseura, who is our important partner in this project. So, Jaana, please.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Erkki. Thank you that you are here in Estonia House. I know that this is in English, this event, but because we are in Estonia House, I use possibility to speak Finnish and Estonian because I speak very shortly. Niin, tervetuloa Eesti-majaan, tere tulemast Eesti-majaan. Eesti-Soome kultuurifondi poolest mul on suur rõõm ja au, et me oleme nii kaugele jõudnud, et täna saame kuula, mis on selle projekti tulemused. Suomalais-virolaisen kulttuurisäätiön puolesta mulla on suuri ilo toivottaa teidät tosiaan myöskin tervetulleeksi ja hienoa, että meillä on tänään tämä päivä, että kuulemme tämän projektin lopputuloksia, että mihin asti ollaan päästy. Viime vuonna säätiö tuki 5 hanketta, joista yksi on tämä, minkä vuoksi tänään olemme täällä. Hienoa, että tosiaan olette näin nopeasti päässeet tähän pisteeseen, siitä onnittelut. Eelmisellä aastalla Eesti-Suomen Kulttuurifond toettaa siis 5 erinevat projektia ja se on yksi nendest. Ja paljon onnea selle puhul, että te olette joutuneet niin kaukelle, että tänään saamme kuulla tulemusi. Suomen ja Viron välisessä suhderaportissa, 3. sellaisessa tulevaisuusraportissa 1+1 on 3. Kulttuuriyhteistyön laajentamisesta koskevissa ehdotuksissa mainitaan ensimmäisenä kohtana, että maittemme keskinäisen ymmärryksen lisäämiseksi pitäisi koota akateeminen Suomen ja Viron vertaileva historiateos. Selle Soome kulttuurikoostööraportissa oli mainittu esimmäisenä kohtana seal kulttuuri nagu eesmärkide ja puhul, et peaks nagu tegema Eesti-Soome ajalooteos, kus võrreldakse seda Soome ja Eesti ajalugu ja vaadeldakse just ja võrreldakse seda. Aga enne kui me võrdleme, meil peab olema võrgustik, meil peab olema dialoog ja ma mõtlengi, et see üritus ongi väga hea nagu just selle jaoks. Ennen kuin tällaista kulttuuritekoa ja tällaista vertailevaa historiatutkimusta voidaan lähteä tekemään, pitää olla verkostot kunnossa, pitää käydä hyvin perusteellinen historiadialogi ennen kuin voidaan lähteä tällaista teosta tekemään. Ja itse näen, että tämä tilaisuus on juuri sellainen, että tämä raportti on yksi osa, voisi olla sellaista dialogia. Iloitsen sekä säätiön että Tuklasseuran puolesta, että olemme saaneet olla mukana tässä hankkeessa ja lähdemme siis kuuntelemaan tuloksia. Suur rõõm on tänään sellest, et nii Tuklase seltsi poolt kui ka Eesti-Soome Kultuurifondi poolt, et me oleme saanud olla koostööpartnerid selles üritusessa ja selles projektis ka. Ja Tuklasseuran toiminnanjohtajan roolissa vielä sanon, että Tuklasseuran jäsenille historia on ollut aina tärkeä osa Tuklasseuran yli 40-vuotista historiaa. Ja muistutan, että meillä on muun muassa tänä keväänä tulossa Viron lähihistoriamatka, että tervetuloa sinne mukaan. Ja yhdet kiitokset vielä erikseen tietenkin raportin tekijälle, koko tälle prosessin läpiviemiselle, mutta erityiset kiitokset Heta Hedmanille. Aitäh Heta, että kaikesta sellaista koostyöt. Minun puolta tere tulemasta.
Aitäh Jaana. Kiitos Jaana. Thank you Jaana. And a special thanks to the Finnish-Estonian Cultural Foundation, because it is with the help of a grant from the foundation that has made this project possible. So we shall begin, and the program, as you know, will be that I will say first a few words about our history dialogue method and the Finnish-Estonian history dialogue, and then continue with the presentation of the report by Reetta Kallanen, who has been the rapporteur of this. And then we will have a comment from Tuomas Hiio, head of research at the Estonian War Museum, and then we will be open for discussion. Also, those participating on the stream following us can put questions and take part in this discussion. So, a history dialogue is something of a flagship for Historians Without Borders. Historians Without Borders, as you know, is an organization an international network of historians, which was founded with the specific aim of removing the misuse or even abuse of history in fostering conflicts and preventing conflict resolution. Happily, this is not the case with Finnish-Estonian relations dialogue. So, but this dialogue method also is very much applicable to those who are in an antagonistic relationship where history is being used also as a battlefield. And this has been the case particularly with the war against Ukraine initiated by Russia, which has been also supported by a Russian narrative of history, which nobody outside Russia really accepts, and certainly not in Ukraine. But Historians Without Borders managed twice to bring together a group of Russian and Ukrainian historians meeting in Helsinki. And the discussions were, I think, very good in the sense that although there was not much that the participants agreed on, they agreed on one thing, and that was the necessity of continuing this kind of dialogue. And we would certainly very much, as Historians Without Borders, want to be party to such a dialogue also in the future, but for the time being, obviously, this is not possible. But we have indications from both Ukrainian and Russian historians that the interest is there and that they perceive the need for this dialogue. So that remains one of our future aims. So our method of dialogue has been mostly used for dialogue among historians, but it can also be applied to dialogues among other audiences as well, such as the general public, history teachers, and others. And the method can be used as a tool to mediate conflicts, as well as for educational purposes, to raise awareness of the multitudes of perspectives concerning the past. And previous dialogues, which Historians Without Borders has arranged, in addition to these two meetings with Ukrainian and Russian historians, have been a Nordic-Belarusian history dialogue in 2020 at the University of Lund in Sweden. And we have also had group dialogue discussions among the general public about the Finnish Civil War and the treatment of that memory from 1918, and the 100 years centenary of this war was the forum, was the basis for our dialogue. And this kind of dialogue is always moderated. As the Ukrainian and Russian history dialogue shows, and there are many other examples one could take up. For example, when we had our first international conference in Helsinki in 2016, we had several workshops covering different aspects of conflicts and history, including one with Palestinian and Israeli historians. And you can very well imagine how difficult this will be. But it's also something which is necessary to try, because if and when a peace agreement can be reached, in any conflict. This peace agreement can be made inoperable unless the history of the conflict and the events leading to the conflict are also addressed. I know that there is a school of thought which says that it's better to sweep under the carpet past lessons of history and forget them. But this doesn't really work, because at one point or sooner or later they will return as zombies to haunt you unless they are properly addressed. So any history dialogue always begins with listening to the other side's narrative. You don't have to agree with it, you can contest it, but you have to know it, you have to recognize it on both sides, because this is the first step to any consensus about history. The Finnish-Estonian history dialogue is, of course, not, as I said, anything to do with antagonism between our histories, on the contrary. But there are lots of items that still need to be discussed among historians, and also making the general public in our countries aware of the different histories of our neighboring countries. And we arranged a meeting in Tallinn, which was attended by 5 historians from Finland and 5 historians from Estonia, along with the moderator, who was Professor Karsten Briggemann from the University of Tallinn. And we had also the Secretary General and Chair of our organization and the Rapporteur, Reetta Kallane, as observers, and also the Finnish ambassador to Estonia was there, and an observer from the European Network of Remembrance and Solidarity. The meeting followed general Chatham House rules to encourage open dialogue, and that's why no names are mentioned of participants in this report. And obviously, in the follow-up discussion after this presentation, we will respect your anonymity if you wish so, and you will not be quoted unless you give specific permission to do so. So, the goals of the dialogue were to produce new information about the points of convergence and differences between the concepts of history and politics, particularly in relation to 20th century history in Finland and Estonia, and to increase mutual understanding of new transitional perspectives, especially for the examination of recent history, and thirdly, the identification of new research topics from the periods in operation. And this is something I would like to stress, because I hope that we get good ideas and proposals for follow-up for this project from our discussion here today. The dialogue meeting followed pre-agreed topics, which were research, cooperation between Estonia and Finland, the state of historical research and historians in their societies, tendencies in the management of the past, historiography, and cross-border perspectives of history, as well as possible future cooperation. So, without further ado, I will give now the floor to Reetta, who will present the report of our dialogue meeting. Please.
Good afternoon, dear friends of Finnish and Estonian history. First of all, I would like to thank the participants of the History Dialogue, Finnish and Estonian historians, for your work and for your commitment to this project, and cooperation between Tallinn University and the support of the Finnish-Estonian Culture Foundation made this project possible. Thank you, Historians Without Borders, for organizing this event. And now, please allow me to provide you with a comprehensive summary of the report, highlighting its key points and findings. As highlighted here by the feedback from participated historians, it is crucial to understand the roots and perspectives in order to write better history, to identify the topics that could benefit the dialogue the most. Participants discussed a wide range of topics during the first Finnish-Estonian history dialogue in Tallinn. Their goal was to identify the most fruitful areas for further exploration. The dialogue focused primarily on 20th century political history. At this first dialogue meeting, two topics stood out: Finlandization and collaboration. Historians have taken great interest in these topics, which has been significant for both Estonia and Finland in the last decades. I believe it's not a coincidence that these topics discussed were also political. These two topics, Finlandization and collaboration, have significantly influenced how Finland's and Estonia's history is perceived. And how we interpret history affects our understanding of current politics. During the dialogue meeting, Finnish and Estonian historians discussed that, especially during times of war, history becomes a powerful tool that can either uplift or tear down society. Historians in Finland and Estonia are leading the way in fighting against the misuse of history in our societies. The role of a historian in society is more significant than merely uncovering facts. It includes upholding professionalism and the ethical use of historical knowledge. It's our responsibility to ensure history's proper use by preventing its misuse and promoting its benefits. Here we have few points, but only few, about current issues in historical research, according to Finnish and Estonian historians, our participants. Historians have been re-evaluating their perspectives, especially on Eastern Europe since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. They have been questioning whether they have seen each country as its own entity or through the lens of Russia. Also, the relationship between Finland and Estonia has often been defined by their relationship with Russia, which has in many cases been the third wheel in these relations. In contemporary historical research, it's crucial to consider transnational perspectives. During the dialogue meeting, historians gave an example of Heino Arumäe's book, Eesti ja Soome sõjast sõjani, which provides a perspective on the interwar period from both Estonian and Finnish viewpoints. Many other historians have also gained valuable insights by taking a step back and looking at the topic from a larger perspective. From a large perspective to a smaller one, historians not only research significant events, but also uncover more minor histories. Not only the European Union or the Soviet Union or relations between politics or capital to capital, but for example, relations of towns like Kotka and Sillamäe or NGO to NGO, artist to artist. Central, local, personal. All these scales matter, and historians must make power structures and the relations between these three visible. Few words about political aspects of history and history politics. Since February 2022, there has been a surge in discussions regarding the preservation of Soviet monuments, both in Estonia and Finland. Some monuments have been removed due to changes in power relations and our relationship to Russia. During the meeting, historians discussed contradicting memory cultures related to Soviet remembrance. Estonian historians have noted that in the 1990s, it was believed that in Estonia that removing, for example, the bronze soldier was pointless. It seemed that differing views on memory culture did not matter. because the older generation would eventually give space to the younger one. But this did not happen because memories last longer than generations. Commemoration is not only personal, but also institutional. In Estonia and in other parts of Europe too, the Russian embassy has been actively promoting Soviet memory culture since the 2000s by renovating Soviet monuments. It's important to respect everyone's right to preserve their family memories and, when possible, distinguish them from Russia's political memory culture to prevent possible misuse of history. It's a common practice in politics to use history as a tool, applying lessons learned from the past to the present. But however, there are limitations to how historical knowledge can be used in contemporary politics. And during the debate, historians gave Finlandization as an example of a political model of coexistence with Russia, but it's also important to be cautious in drawing conclusions from history and applying them to current situations as politics. All participants emphasized the importance of Finnish-Estonian cooperation in historical research, and all expressed their desire to continue the dialogue. As the professor of Estonian and General History, Karsten Brüggemann from Tallinn University stated, the closeness of Finland and Estonia can be used as a tool for more intense debates of history. History dialogue is at its best when working towards common goal. No other format, such as an academic conference, can quite compare. By continuing the dialogue, we can gain more insight into history, why our interpretations differ, and how our interpretations are formed. All participants themselves suggested by broadening the discussion on topics like, for example, Finlandization and collaboration, and by inviting historians from diverse fields, such as art history, we can gain valuable insights and perspectives that would be otherwise missed. And continuing this history dialogue is an opportunity to deepen our understanding of history and our understanding of Estonian and Finnish relations. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will hear comments from Thomas Eoff. You have the floor, please.
Honorable Erkki Tuomioja, professor and scholars, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. I'm getting old, I need my glasses. I was invited first time to an event of Historians Without Borders some years ago, but was not able to participate. Then the COVID pandemic came in between. But Finnish-Estonian cooperation between historians in such framework is very welcomed. I am here only as double substitute. First, because I have been invited to the autumn meeting only for replacing Professor Aigerai Tamm, who should cancel her participation at the last moment. And secondly, because the planned speaker today, Associate Professor Kaarel Piirimäe, has recently broken his leg. No sports, as Winston Churchill had used to say. But to the topic. As it was stressed by all participants of the autumn meeting several times, Finns and Estonians are perhaps the closest nations in Europe, and our tense cooperation is therefore normal. It has been also then as normal, and it is running without big ceremonies and celebrations, contrary to my personal experience of similar cooperation between Estonian historians and historians of some bigger nation. But on the other hand, our cooperation is therefore sometimes remained unnoticed. I could use as a starting point of Finnish-Estonian academic cooperation the visit of Alexander Mõttus to the 50th anniversary of Soomelaisuuden kirjallisuuden seura in 1881. Mõttus was chairman of the Estonian Student Society then. There was only a couple of tens of Estonian university students in the beginning of 1880s, and it was quite normal that Estonian students in their national aspirations were interested in contacts with Finnish academic circles. We should remember that Soomelaisuuden kirjallisuuden seura was then already 50 years old. I shall not tell the whole history of Finnish-Estonian academic cooperation here, but it is essential to remember that the history of the academic life and academic contacts of the representatives of our nations did not begin only after the birth of our independent statehoods in December 1917 and February 1918, respectively. During the session in autumn in Tallinn, the most of attention was paid to the history of the 20th century. Let's leave the 21st century with EU and NATO for political science yet, at least for a while. There are some, but not too much, common research topics from, I could say, big history of Finland and Estonia. We know all a number of Finnish historians who are doing excellent research on Estonian history, on themes connected to Estonian history. There are not so many of us Estonian historians who are doing their research in Finnish history. For us, the history of Russia, Latvia, Germany, Poland, and even Sweden has been more important, and we know why. I said that we are perhaps the closest nations in Europe. However, our histories are in many points very different. The Gulf of Finland has been not only natural, but also, I would say, geopolitical dividing line. The number of research topics which importance is on the same level for the historians of the both countries is not too big. Beginning of our independences, Finnish Civic War and Estonian War of Independence, political, military, intellectual, and as well as economic cooperation in interwar period, Finnish Winter War and Continuation War, together with World War II occupations in Estonia, intellectual cooperation in Soviet time under umbrella of Finlandization and collaboration, propaganda and importance of Yle TV, Finnish tourism, Finnish help for Estonia during regaining our independence, and some more. By personal reasons, I would like to stress also the relations of Finnish and Estonian student organizations, beginning with 20s, and the connection of this tense relationship to the kindred nations case, heimoaate and heimovalues, until today. However, every generation has to write at least a part of the whole history anew, from the starting point of its era and environment and experience. I should briefly elaborate on the language issue too. Here I am speaking to you, ladies and gentlemen, in my quite broken English. Contemporary Estonian and Finnish students communicate usually in English too. However, the situation is not hopeless. There are already students and younger colleagues in Estonia who have spent a part of their life in Finland and went to Finnish schools, mostly because of the work and life of their parents in Finland. There are Finnish students who have studied some terms in Estonian universities and are fluent in Estonian too. Why it is important? It is important because most of the history of a nation happens and is written down in national language. The knowing or at least reading skills of the language of the neighboring nation are inevitable for successful research of history connected to neighboring nation or of the neighboring nation. Academic world is full of papers, articles and books written in English on a topic that has no connection to English-speaking part of the world. A lingua franca has been always needed in course of the whole written history, but historian should be also present there where he is here or his broader audience. Most of the books written by Finnish historians on Estonian history or on the topics concerning partly the Estonian history are translated into Estonian, and it is good. I don't think that the meetings of Estonian and Finnish historians, like it was organized in Tallinn by the Historians Without Borders, are extremely important. Of course, we meet each other at conferences and dinners and lunches connected to the conferences, as well as participants of international projects and scholarships. But in our overloaded timetables, there is not too much space for change of thoughts and opinions in a form of debate, free discussion. Therefore, I am very thankful to Historians Without Borders for offering such opportunity, and I am hoping to the continuation of the cooperation of Finnish and Estonian historians in this format as well as on other ways. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Thomas, for your comments. And now we have time for the possibility for discussion, questions, answers and comments on the report. And I would particularly again stress what we expect and hope for is to get ideas and proposals for the follow-up of this kind of dialogue. And because as I see it, this is only, well, it's not the beginning, of course, because we have had extensive cooperation between Finnish and Estonian historians, but this is one point in the process which will continue. And I think that our dialogue in this Tallinn identified many of the items and the issues on which there may be divergent views between, the national perspective. But what struck me was that we talked mostly about post-Second World War times, about the Soviet period and the post-Soviet period, whereas my own research in Estonian history has been more concentrated, for what it's worth, on the First Republic period. But this is also a period which has created, if not tensions, at least some different views among Finnish and Estonian historians. So I think that we should also enlarge the perspective, and indeed not begin with Estonia or Finnish independence, 1917, 1918, but also go back to the period. One thing which I would find quite interesting is the question of the building of national identity and a comparison of how it took place in Estonia, how it took place in Finland. Finland was the more fortunate party in this respect, because when we gained our independence in 1917, we had already our national institutions, including our own currency, in place. So independence was just a relatively smooth process, quite different from Estonia. But also the national awakening process prior to the independence had Similar features, slightly different features, and I would find a comparison between these two of historical interest. But these are just some points I want to raise, and I open the floor to your comments and questions, please. And also people from following us online. There are no questions as yet, so please. We also had some people who were present at the dialogue meeting in Tallinn. If they want to comment on the report, please do so. Sirka Ahonen, please. Just wait to the microphone.
Why I found this dialogue project very interesting, and why I also would like this dialogue to go on, because there are of course, this was a very short enterprise, so there are questions that have been left unanswered. So this Erkki spoke about this national identity. In terms of the 19th century, both Estonians and Finns went through a kind of conscientization of their national identities. But then, today, I find a discussion among Finnish historians going on about historical identity in general. And this was on. I took part in a kind of historical identity research in the 1990s. It was all European. And what we found, that Finnish, that was youth research. They were 15-year-olds who answered the questionnaire. And what we found was that when the young people were asked about their relationship to their nationality or to values like democracy and liberalism. So it seemed that Finnish youth were closer to Estonian or Baltic. We had also Latvia included, Baltic perceptions of history. They, when asked about the relationship to nationhood, the Finnish and Estonian young people were keen, both of them especially keen on this national aspect of identity. While the other way or road to historical identity is the Nordic way. Finland has been for centuries part of Sweden and so on. So, but now, when asked about the importance of national identity, the Nordic students were less interested compared to the Finnish and Baltic students about their national identity. And in contrast, they were much more interested in the history of making democracy and liberal state and society in their countries. Yeah, the Nordic interest was much more, much stronger than the Baltic identity. For instance, there was this astonishing result, which I think must have been to a greater part due to the research methodology. When asked about democracy, Estonian students found it very little interest in that. And while for Nordic students it was perhaps the most important thing. So when we go on having a dialogue about the past, so we could perhaps also point at the processes of making liberal state and welfare society and all that, and to find what's the importance of these things, these episodes and the values related to them among Estonians and Finns. Yeah.
Thank you. Other comments? Well, this is very interesting what you said about that interest or identification with national identity issues is waning in Finland. And I think that you are right in that, and I would very much welcome that process also. But perhaps Thomas, you might comment on how is it in Estonia, because of course you know different history, and the re-emergence of your independence is a much younger event. So I would presume that national identity issues are more important and central in Estonia.
I think it is quite hard to say, because somehow this national identity for many Estonians is quite personal issue. And I have the happiness to be young and student when Estonia regained its independence at the end of 1980s, in the beginning of 1990s. And perhaps in this context, I have quite strong national Estonian identity. When I am speaking with my son, who is now, I think, 22 years old, so he's somehow saying to me that your state is very important for you because you have grown up with your state, but for us it is something different. So it is also changing with generations, and in Estonia we have not perhaps such situation to think and elaborate about our national identity like Finns have and have had, because of our living under Soviet Union for half a century and of our very big Russian-speaking part of population. So I don't know actually how Finns are defining them, themselves, but Estonians historically are defined, Estonians are those who are not Russians or Germans. So it's very simple actually, because there were always trends in 19th century, in the beginning of 20th century, of more successful and more educated parts of Estonian community or society to become somebody else. So somehow to be Estonian was 100 years ago, 150 years ago, for an Estonian, for an educated Estonian, not very easy even. So we value our Estonianness, and we are happy about it. And even now, when Estonia has joined 20 years ago to EU and NATO, so there were also voices that now we are members of common family, and we should do something differently as earlier, because we are now the West too. But during some last years we could see that such change is not so easy in geopolitical.
Thank you. Jaara.
I need to comment that because I made my dissertation about Estonian children who were born in 1990, 1991, and my research theme was Estonian children national identity. And I think that one reason is curriculum. It was very interesting in that time to look and find out what kind of issues are in national curriculum, what they want that Estonians will be. And if I think when I worked in Estonia, 2005, 2009, in that time Estonia tried to find values for the schools. In Finland we have 5 values. And it was so very interesting to find out that it was very difficult that Estonians, they couldn't decide what are the values for the schools, what they want to what kind of nation they want to grow up there. So the national identity, it's very different. The school system is very different, and the curriculum is very different, and the values are very different too, like you said. So that's interesting. We think we are very near, but the system are very different.
Thank you. Other comments? No questions from the net? Right, Sirko.
I want to comment on what you said about differences within Estonia about national identity. In this research I mentioned from 1997, it was published. Of course, it's old now, but I still keep thinking about the results there. So there was a clear difference between Estonian-speaking and Russian-speaking Estonians, and Russian speakers were not that interested in the national aspect of their identity.
And in my research, I had also a few Russian students, but they was learning in Estonian-speaking school. Mm-hmm. And it was very interesting that they like to live in Estonia. They like Estonian, and their relation to Estonian language was very positive, but they didn't like Estonian people. But also, the Russian-speaking parents want to grow up their children as an European, not Estonian.
For us in Finland, national identity has never had any particular relationship with Germany. It has had, of course, a relationship with Russia, but mostly it has had a relationship with Sweden and the Swedish language minority in our country. Up to the 30s, Finnish politics was very much not dominated, but influenced by the struggle for influence between the two language groups and language rights. But happily, that is now past history, and that is not a problem any longer. Of course, the Swedish minority has diminished. It was, even in the 30s, it was more about 12%. Now it is about 6%, so it is halved. But it is no longer, has not longer been an issue for, well, I would say after the Second World War, it has never been an issue, really. You may find some cultural interventions which still raise that issue, but not. It is not something which affects politics in Finland any longer. But unless there are no other comments, I would like to thank all the participants, and particularly the participants in the dialogue meeting in Tallinn, and also our rapporteur, and of course our partners, Douglas Society, the Finnish-Estonian Culture Foundation, and Tallinn University for their event. So we are looking forward to following up this project. So thank you very much, and we now have, I think, some time for free discussion, but we will end the streaming event. But thanks for those who have been attending all. Thank you.